important thing is that sometimes these things can rule our lives. I can tell you that a lot of my life has been based around, well, the things that I love to a point where it has become unhealthy. Hey, I love junk food, and that's a big reason why I am as big as I am. But you always have to be sure that what you're doing is healthy. And again, that can be really difficult to determine on your own. When you're in it deep, when you're in the shit, well, it can be impossible to tell which way is up and which way is down. So make sure to listen to other people. This is how you find that people become addicted to things. And I could tell you a thing or two about addiction in its own way. You don't want to be addicted to something. Don't let it rule you. Listen to other people. Do other things. Lead as healthy a lifestyle as you can. And I don't mean that in terms of what you eat and how you exercise. Just be a varied person. Expose yourself to the world. See many viewpoints. And try and view yourself in as clear a viewpoint as you can. Keep the boundaries between you and the things you love. Don't let them get in the way of the people you love or anything else that makes life important. Number 4, it's the worst feeling to be on the wrong side of something, whether you know it or whether you don't. Abandon the things you love if necessary. And I'm talking about being a fan of something here. People you know, that's a whole different story. The things that you love shouldn't get in the way of someone's well-being. Unfortunately, this year, a lot of people that we are fans of, I'm fans of, have let us down, have let me down, and beyond letting us down, have done things that we shouldn't support, that we absolutely should not condone. And sometimes that involves a harsh decision. Sometimes that involves pulling all of your support from this person and from the things they've done. For example, a certain filmography of an actor. Maybe it's not the right thing to continue to monetarily support them. Perhaps it's the music catalog of a certain recording artist who has done something unspeakable. It could be anything. And this is hard. This is really hard. I know it's easy for me to spout the rules here, and it's a constant swamp that we have to stomp through and figure out. And there are gray areas. But what shouldn't be a gray area is how to treat other people. And if your fandom of something, if something you love, something that you deeply, deeply love, is hurting other people, then you could be helping that hurt of other people, if you catch my drift, by continuing to support this thing, this person, this whatever it is. Again, it's about not letting it get in the way of your life or the lives of other people. Be prepared to kill your darlings, to abandon if necessary. Now, John has done a couple of these rules, and he usually ends it with "don't be an asshole," which is good. But John, if you'll allow me to editorialize for a second, I feel like not being an asshole should be kind of a low bar. I mean, it is. And I feel like we should strive for a little better than that. Not being an asshole, that should be the bare minimum. You shouldn't even have to think about that. I know, should. But what I'm saying is tweaking that just a little bit. Number 5, keeping all of these rules in mind, maybe the most important rule for being a good fan, and this kind of goes along with keeping your hate to a minimum. Be kind. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to like things. We're going to be on the wrong side of things sometimes. Sometimes other people are going to be on the wrong side. And as good as it can feel to to say, aha, I knew you were wrong. Be kind. Try to educate, not talk down to. And I know that it gets into gray waters as well. Be kind to people, especially young people, who like a silly thing. There are a lot of silly things to like out there. And believe me, I have liked and will continue to like very silly things. But I don't understand, and I hope I never do, the desire to bring somebody down for something that brings them joy. Be kind to people, especially those younger than you. It can be very easy to stand a ways back and laugh and sneer and point because they like that. Ew. I've done that many times in my life. Not just to younger people, but to people I know. They'll never know that I did it. But the change starts with you. Again, it's very easy for me to say this to you, but it's true. The way you treat people when you're not around them arguably says more than how you treat them when they are around. So, if you can't agree on something, if you can't see eye to eye, be kind. We're all different people. And I'd like to think that through being fans of things, it can bring different people together to see different points of view. I made some of my best friends through one of the things that I love, professional wrestling. I've made friends through a lot of other things that I love. But the beauty of it is, these are people that are so different than me. They see the thing that I love in a completely different way. Sometimes it really doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes it does. But what's important is that we both share passion. We're allowed to share in moments with each other that maybe we never would without the thing that we love. I hope that the language I've used in this segment hasn't been too broad. It's kind of hard to do this without a script, I'll be honest with you. But those 5 bullet points for being a good fan. Just remember kindness, sincerity, and hopefully love. Again, this is all really easy for me to say. I'm going to fuck up. You're going to fuck up. We all will. But just one fuck up doesn't mean that we're lost. Keep going. Keep loving what you love. Keep loving who you love. And spread that love through the things you love. How many times can I say love? All right, John, back to you. Those are my rules for being a good fan. My name's Will Young. Check out Elwood City Limits podcast if you're a fan of Arthur. And of course, keep listening to The John DeLong Show.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Will, for joining me once again on The John DeLong Show in that sort of pre-recorded sort of method. I'm sure that we're going to have Will back in the new year. Got a lot of great feedback from the episode where he was on in sort of an interview conversation style. And it's always a pleasure to have him along. Really great friend. And of course, Elwood City Limits every single week. Make sure that you check that out where you can find podcasts. You found this one, so I'm willing to bet that you're able to find other podcasts. Anyhow, moving swiftly along. When there's too much news, too many things that I want to cover, and too much stuff to say in the traditional podcast format, we go to a special segment that I like to call Cheers and Jeers. And since we're covering the entire year that was 2017, we've got a bunch of stuff to go over. So here it is, Cheers and Jeers, 2017 edition. The basic premise here is that I'm going to cheer something, give it props, shout them out positively, whatever the case may be. Then I'm going to jeer something, deride a party that deserves derision. It's like a miniature version of the podcast as a whole, but with some wonderful ukulele music in the background. So let's get going. 2017 edition of Cheers and Jeers. First of all, cheers to women in general. but particularly those in the entertainment industry whose silence breaking through the Me Too movement was one of the biggest good news stories to my mind of the year. Now, of course, I've said it before on the show. I obviously don't think that the Me Too movement having to exist is necessarily a good thing, because no shit, it's not. But ultimately, this was eye-opening for broad swaths of folks whose eyes needed to be fucking opened. And maybe, just maybe, it's that I live in a bit of a bubble and it's an echo chamber in my own social media circles, but it actually seemed to me that I was seeing a lot more guys replying with "I believe you" rather than "well, not all guys." So ultimately, good news story to me that, you know, eyes are being opened and things seem to actually be changing for the positive. Of course, there's still a lot of work to do there, but ultimately, you know, as much as it sucked to see a bunch of people that I really respected as artists get dragged out for, you know, being terrible people, it's good that that stuff was brought to light. So ultimately, cheers to the women who put themselves out on the line like that. And jeers going out to the literal fucking Nazis being back. Guys, would that I could go back to those halcyon days when I thought Bush was the worst that it could be. Charlottesville was, of course, a moment of unspeakable horror. To see young men, and they were, of course, predominantly men, marching openly in the streets, chanting "Jews will not replace us," all culminating in the death of Heather Heyer. It was one of those moments that I honestly didn't ever think that I would see in my lifetime. Things like this are supposed to be reserved for the past, and I'll acknowledge that I was believing that, coming from a place of enormous privilege. You know, that I could sit back and believe that this sort of thing was in our past until this sort of thing started happening on such an overt scale. So yeah, the Nazis are back, and that sucks. However, it must be said, cheers to the fact that the Nazis are much, much worse at this than the people who are on the right side of history. Let's not forget that some of these motherfuckers, like, nobody was wearing a hood. They were chanting these awful, hateful things. They were involved in these awful, hateful, you know, this murder of this poor woman, all the while having their pictures taken for the newspaper and having their asses outed to the world. And, my respect and my privacy were violated. Well, maybe don't be a fucking Nazi. Maybe don't go to that fucking rally. And maybe once, you know, the neo-Nazis and the KKK started chanting their shit, maybe that's the time to leave the Unite to the Right rally. Because if there are good people on both sides, President Trump, those people stop being good people when they just allowed that shit to go on. Now, this is an aside, and it could probably fill up the whole podcast on its own if this show were, you know, produced by somebody much smarter than me. But I honestly wonder what the alt-right, Gamergate, Proud Boy, SS Light, wannabe Hitler youth are going to do when they realize that, sure, President Trump is certainly a racist, homophobic, moronic, narcissistic, probably anti-Semitic, would be nothing more than orange-tinted white trash if daddy didn't have money, delusional bigot, who has done nothing to distance himself from David Duke, the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and the other dregs of society, but honestly, he isn't one of them. Trump's only real allegiance is to Donald Trump, and he only cozies up to people when they cozy up to him. So, yeah, surprise, surprise, the Nazis have cozied themselves up to a loser as their leader. And when it comes right down to it, while he may believe a lot of the same stuff, he would toss them under the bus in a heartbeat, which is why I feel so hopeful for those on the right side of history. You know, Trump's inauguration was a moment of terribleness, the enormity of which can only be busted by the fake number of attendees. The world could have cowered in fear at that moment, but something way better happened. The Women's March happened. When the Muslim ban came down, let's not pretend that it wasn't a Muslim ban. The response from the ACLU and from the bench was swift. There was real resistance to what was happening in 2017, such that it took a year for Trump and the Republicans to actually get anything accomplished legislatively. With wins in Virginia and with Alabama behind them, the Democrats actually look poised to do more in 2018. So while the fight is not over, it's still a fight. And for once, it actually looks like the Democrats are in it to win it, which is great. So cheers to that. Cheers to the fact that 2017 had seen more gun deaths, more natural disasters, and nothing seems to be actually happening about it. October 1st. All right, guys. I could be talking about anything right now, and you wouldn't be surprised. So October 1st, think about it for a second. Chances are pretty good that when I say October 1st, you couldn't even bring to mind that that was the date of the worst mass shooting in U.S. history in Las Vegas. Like, we're not even talking about it anymore. I'm not saying that we need to walk around